Hey guys, Charlie Murphy here, recording another session of Ignition 6 Max regular tables, $1, $2 blinds. Our tables are up and running, so let's jump right in. Lower right-hand table, we have a blind on blind spot with 5-3 suited. It's a pretty standard open there, towards the bottom of a standard open range, but a fine hand to open, even if we aren't expanding our range, which might be justifiable as the big blinds aren't aggressive enough in most cases. And we'll open the sevens on the lower right-hand table from the button as well. Big blind comes along. We've got a 9-6 deuce two-tone board. We're going to go ahead and range bet small. Upper left-hand table, the cutoff opens 2.5x. We're going to go ahead and defend that from the big blind. Not much reason to 3-bet. A call is just fine there. We get check raise small on the lower right-hand table. We're going to go ahead and peel that to continue. Against the small check raise size, we're going to be calling with pretty much any pair here, as well as any kind of draws or backdoor draws. Upper left-hand table, we have no real equity to speak of. A couple of backdoor straight draws or backdoor gut shots. Without the backdoor flush draw 6 high, we're just going to go ahead and fold. There's better hands to check call or check raise. Against the second barrel on the turn, we can go ahead and let pocket sevens go. We'd be continuing with sets and straights, of course. Any of our big draws, our heart draws or our club draws, our open-enders like 7-8, combo draws in there as well. The one-pair hands are trickier. The overpairs and good 9x, I think I'm still calling with, but it gets a lot closer given he's check raised and now blast the turn for pot. Upper left-hand table, we open sixes, blind on blind. And we're going to go ahead and check range out of position on the 10-5-4 two-tone board. And under the gun player, limps, we can go ahead and tag him as a recreational player. We're going to check call with the sixes against the half-pot stab on the upper left-hand table. He checks to us again. I guess we could, in theory, get some value against a 5x. However, I'd much rather give him a chance to bluff with all kinds of weird random overcards, missed diamonds, etc. And he had queen 9 offsuit. No relevant backdoors on the flop either. He didn't stab with it on the river. I think he probably should have, as opposed to showing down queen high, although I was looking to get into that line in particular to call him down while bluffing, so it saved him a bet, even though I think it would have been the right move to make. Queen 7 off is not a standard open from the button. Probably want queen 9 or better in general. These blinds haven't shown themselves to be particularly fishy or nitty, so I'm not going to go ahead and expand my range that wide to include it. You could talk me into it under certain circumstances, though. Player on the upper right-hand table has limped some pre-flop. We're going to go ahead and tag him as a rec based on that. We're also facing a 3x open from under the gun on that table. We're going to go ahead and defend with a call with the queen 9 suited. Actually defending fairly tightly against the 3x under the gun open, but we can still have some calls in there, and queen 9 is a fine hand to call. And we check range out of position on the 7-3 king rainbow board. Just going to go ahead and check call that. Lower right-hand table, we open blind on blind with 5-3 suited. That's pretty standard, and we'll check range out of position on King 7-6 two-tone. And I'm trying to decide if there's any merit in trying to value bet. I think given I don't have very many obvious withdraws on that real dry flop, so I don't think I'm going to be given credit for having bluffs in my range too much there. I'm just going to check my middling king and try to induce a bluff. Lower right-hand table, gut shot to the low end of the straight, no backdoor flush draw. I'm facing a pot-sized bet. I'm just going to go ahead and check fold that. Against a smaller size, I could continue for some check calls or check raises, but against a pot-sized bet there, without any extra backdoor draws, I can just go ahead and fold that low gut shot. Upper left-hand table, we have 4s in the cutoff. We're going to go ahead and open that. In that same table, now in middle position, we're going to go ahead and open King-Queen offsuit. Those are both pretty standard opens, especially the King-Queen. 4s might be a bit more marginal as it's such a small pair, though I think from the cutoff it's still going to be fine. Lower right-hand table, Queen-9 suited will open from under the gun. That's towards the bottom of our under-the-gun open range, but still a very reasonable hand to open with. Lower left-hand table is interesting as we've got a short stack player playing 35 blinds deep, opens from middle position. Queen-9 with all those players columns in position, we're just going to check range. I'm trying to decide here. I think I do want to just raise this up and get it in. It's pretty close, but he's already been fairly active pre-flop. 36-18 over 11 hands, going in for a raise again. He's only got 35 blinds deep, so I think it's somewhat close. But given how short he is and just how infrequently I'm punished by running my pair into an overpair with very lousy equity for my hand, I think it's okay to go ahead and raise up the 9s. Probably on the cusp. I wouldn't have too many pre-flop bluffs here, but I would have a couple. Some hands that would fold back to a jam. Probably some hands like ace-queen, king-queen suited, ace-jack suited. Stuff that'll play well if he goes to the flop on me. And just so I have a few hands that actually raise fold here in this scenario. Blind on blind, the upper left-hand table, we face a 3x raise first in from the small blind. We can go ahead and defend with most, if not all, of our suited combos. We'll put this one in the call range. We'll have a few kind of janky random offsuit, or I'm sorry, a few random janky suited cards that we'll use as a pre-flop 3-bet bluff. However, we'll just go ahead and call with the small suited connector. Same thing pre-flop over here with the button min raise. We've got 6-4 suited. Upper left-hand table on that Jack 7-5 two-tone board, I just checked back my 4 high with no relevant backdoors, I guess, except for a couple of low backdoor straight draws, but almost no backdoor draws, no backdoor flush draws. We just go ahead and check that back and then fold to a bet on the turn. Lower left-hand table, blind on blind, King 7 suited is a standard open. We get called. We're going to go ahead and check range on Queen 6-3 two-tone. Now he checks back the flop. I can have queens full, quad sixes, threes full of sixes, and a variety of 6x type hands. He should not have nearly as many of those. I've also got a draw that I want to have a lot of money in the pot if it hits. I want to be betting polarized with an overbet size here, so I'm going to put those big hands in there as well as my flush draws that make very strong flushes on flush closing rivers. So we'll go ahead and use the overbet size to bet with the King 7 suited on that board. Upper left-hand table, we face a 2.5x open from the button. We're in the big blind with Queen 9. That would be a standard open in most cases, but this guy's been very tight and passive so far through 23 hands. He's only raised twice. I'm actually going to deviate and play a bit tighter and fold this hand, even though it would be a standard defense against a player who's been standardly aggressive. We'll fold both Queen 8 and Jack 8 suited on the button, facing some raises ahead of us. Lower right-hand table will open Ace 8 suited from middle position. The player after us seems to be a recreational, playing 50-10, 45-9 over 11 hands. Upper left-hand table we're going to shuffle out is one new player with a full stack, and the other two players also have full stacks and have reg-type pre-flop stats so far. I will look for a softer table. We'll open Queen 9 suited on the button, the upper left-hand table. Get called by the big blind. Get a Jack 6 deuce two-tone flop, which I'm going to range bet small if he checks to me, which he did. Keep barrel on the 10 specifically. 8s and kings aren't so bad. A queen, a lot of cases, gives me top pair. In some cases, I'll bet that. In some cases, I'll check it back to have some good top pairs in my check back range. Upper right-hand table, we have a suspected recreational player who limps under the gun. We're going to isolate up from middle position with something like our under the gun raise first in range, about a 17% range. Pocket kings is, of course, included as part of that. Get a limp call. The board comes down 10-4-3 rainbow. We're going to go ahead and range bet him small. I guess there could be some argument for sizing up against a weak recreational player, and we've got a strong overpair. I didn't do that, but if you do it, I think it's just fine. The ace turn is pretty good for my range, but pretty bad for my specific hand. I'm going to keep betting. Don't really have much in the way of 2x except for ace deuce here. I don't really have 5-6, 5-7, 6-7. I do have a variety of Broadway straight draws and flush draws. I'm going to keep betting my sets. I'll probably trap with the aces. I'll keep betting ace-10, maybe check back a couple of those ace-3, ace-4, two-pair combos, so I've got some stronger hands in my river range as well. And I'm also going to be betting the flush draws that I pick up on the turn, and some combos of that Broadway gut shot, some combos of those offsuit Broadway cards with king queen, king jack, queen jack. Now here we face a bet on the river after we check back the turn from a recreational player on a board that got awfully scary awfully quick. 4 to the straights out there and 3 to the flush. Fish are pretty bluffy in this line, but not so much on this particular board. Let's see here. However, the 4 straight river makes it pretty close. The flush closing river. This actually might slant towards a fold. It's very, very close. I'm going to go ahead and call it down, but it's very close. And I say it's very close because recreational players, while they're very bluffy, they're not necessarily very bluffy on flush closing boards, on 4 straight flush or straight runouts, or when ace high boards end up out there either on the flop or peeling later in the hand. All those factors made it a lot closer. In general, I'm just looking to go ahead and call anything in that line when I don't bet the turn and I check back and I face that river bet, any kind of reasonably sized bet from a recreational player. The texture being just so bad, one for bluffing tendencies and 2 for my specific hand, made it a bit closer. But when it's close, I go ahead and call, especially against the Rex. And we snapped off a 7 high busted gut shot bluff that time. Upper right-hand table, a recreational player limps in the cutoff. We're sitting on the big blind with king-jack offsuit, which we're going to go ahead and isolate up against him. This is probably one of the weaker hands in our range that we would isolate up with against the limper and the small blind completer. I think it's still just fine to do, and you could probably even go a bit looser than that, but that's about as loose as I would go. Ace-10, king-jack offsuit. Pocket 8s are better, suited broadways, and maybe the suited 9x type hands like ace-9 through 10-9. The rec limps and then calls our isolation raise. We also get called by the player in the small blind. Multi-away with at least one player in position on me. I'm going to go ahead and check my range, even though there's a pretty good board for my specific hand and my range as a whole, as I have a lot of jack-x, a lot of overpairs. And the rec goes, and he bets a half pot. And we get called behind by the small blind for half pot. I think this hand's a little bit too weak to go ahead and raise, so I'm just going to call it again and then play the turn. We peel a king, which is interesting as it makes top 2, but it also completes the nut straight. Lower right-hand table, we opened ace-8 suited blind on blind, and now we'll check range on the jack-jack 5 rainbow board. He checks behind. We peel a 3 of hearts. We're just going to go ahead and keep checking. Now that we get a second call here, I've got to be a little bit worried that this guy has queen 10, but not completely worried when he doesn't raise it. He could also have various flush draws or combo draws. The recreational player also seems to be a bit on the wild, aggressive side. I think I actually just want to go ahead and flat this and give the rec a chance to keep bluffing. Let the player behind me indicate what kind of strength he has based on his action as well. There's some merit to check raising that, but I opted just to check call it. And we were against a lower straight draw from that player. And we were against ace-jack from the recreational player, so that turn actually bailed us out completely. Recreational player again limps, this time from under the gun. We're going to go ahead and isolate him again out of the blinds, this time from the small blind, this time with pocket 10s, but same basic idea as before. Big blind calls or folds, the rec calls. On queen 10-9 two-tone, we're going to go ahead and range bet small. Checking this hand on lots of turns. An eight's obviously pretty much the best turn possible for our hand. However, the club is not the one we were looking for. I'm going to go ahead and check without the club in my range right here. Lower right-hand table, we're going to stab in this blind-on-blind checked-in spot where we've got the gut shot with Jack 5. Against the rec that bets half pot, we're just going to go ahead and call with our 10 and check to him again on the river. Lower right-hand table, we've got that gut shot, but no real flush blockers, anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and check this one back. I've got plenty of better 5x I can actually be stabbing with on the turn. And here I'm pretty sure there's nothing to do but go ahead and call against a recreational player. It's possible he has that flush on that flush closing turn. That pot size bet tends to be a bit stronger, but I'm just too strong here with the straight to really consider doing very much of anything else. Yeah, and he had ace clubs, 4 hearts. So he had the nut flush blocker, which makes that pretty reasonable. Upper left-hand table, we're in middle position. We get 3-bet by the button to a relatively large size, 3.5x. And this is probably just outside my continue range, even though it may seem tight. This player himself has also been tight. I'm going to make a snug fold and go ahead and lay that one down. If you wanted to continue for a call, it's not the end of the world. I don't know. I don't think that it's massively profitable, but it's certainly justifiable. It's certainly pretty close, especially if the sizing was a bit smaller, especially if the player set himself to be more aggressive. We'll go ahead and fold there with no real equity on that ace-deuce-7 two-tone board after we checked in the big blind against the limper. We're going to go ahead and tag this player as a recreational also for limping pre-flop, as it's typically a dead giveaway. Upper left-hand table, we're going to open ace-queen suited in the cutoff. Upper right-hand table, Jack 4 suited is a standard open from the button, so we'll go ahead and bring that in. Lower right-hand table, we face a 2.5x open from the cutoff, and 9-8 suited is just a little bit too loose to go ahead and defend, probably just outside of a standard defense range for me. Upper left-hand table, 9-8 suited, again a little bit looser than the standard open. Pretty close. You could open it in some cases, but I'm just going to go ahead and fold it. Upper right-hand table, we've got both blinds call, ace-9-6 two-tone. We have the flush draw with the Jack 4 suited, so we're going to go ahead and bet out small. Not range betting in that spot with 2 players out there, but still going to bet our flush draws that have a lot of equity. Can also pick up the pot right now in a lot of cases. You get check raised small by a small blind player, playing about 30 blinds deep, and then quickly called by the recreational player in the big blind. We've got 23.5 blinds out there with 4.5 more to call. We have a jack-high flush draw. No reason to think the hearts aren't good. Nothing to do but just go ahead and call this and take a turn in position. Ideally picking up that third heart and looking to get a bunch of money in with our flush. And I guess that small bet size, having to call 6 into a pot of 39. Once again, nothing to do but go ahead and call with our heart draw. Upper left-hand table against the button open small blind call. We're going to defend tighter than typical, but still defend with a hand like King 5 suited for a 2.5x open. And we'll be checking range here. I'm not going to go ahead and try to bluff these players after they've shown so much concern for this pot by check raising and then you know, cold calling and then betting the turn and calling. Even though the sizing was kind of funky and small, against one player I'd probably have no way I could talk myself into giving this up. But against 2 players, both of whom seem kind of recreational, and both of whom have, played some lines where their hands are a lot less likely to be weak. I'm just going to go ahead and actually surrender this. And I end up running into a higher heart draw, and then a straight. It wasn't even a straight draw. I don't know why he did that on the flop. It was a backdoor straight draw, or that picked up straight draw on the turn. So yeah, in case I wasn't sure by his short stack, we can go ahead and tag this guy as a wreck as well. And I guess my bluff would have likely worked, as nobody else even had a pair. Upper right-hand table, we're going to go ahead and squeeze the under the gun open and middle position call from the cutoff with our pocket tens. And now we get instantly jammed on by this recreational player over our pocket tens. I think that's going to be fine to just go ahead and fold that, even though we are a bit shorter from that last hand, too. I think it's probably just asking a bit too much to have him be doing that with random hands there. We haven't seen him at 3-bet or do anything too aggressive pre-flop yet either, so I don't think I'm in great shape against his range. Yeah, and he had pocket kings. If I've got queens, he probably still doesn't get me to get away from it, or ace-king, probably not. But tens I'm going to fold, as I did. I think I still fold jacks as well. I don't love his pre-flop play. I mean, even the cold 4-bet's going to look super strong there after a raise first in, a call, and then a squeeze from the cutoff. But a cold 4-bet to a more reasonable size probably makes more sense in that situation. Although maybe not, because I was also playing a bit shorter. Got a 3x open for middle position on the lower right-hand table. Hand like queen 4 is a fine hand to fold. And against the raise and re-raise on the lower left-hand table, we can fold king 6 from the big blind. We're just going to go into a cold 4-bet or fold type scenario there after the raise on the re-raise, of which king 6 is not even in consideration for being a part of that range. You can fold jack 5 from the cutoff on the lower left-hand table. The table seems pretty reg-infested as well. No obvious fish, so I'm going to go ahead and shuffle that out. We've played enough orbits there to have a good grasp on those players and for their stats to start to mean something. Top tables have some recreational players, though. A couple of guys that we've tagged. Another guy playing awful loose stats so far, 45-27 over 12 hands and 33-0 over 6. Those guys are both promising. We'll raise blind on blind the lower left-hand table against the half stack. Upper left table's got one player we've tagged as a rec already so far, and the player to my immediate right's playing 32-10 over 31 hands, also a suspected rec, although we have to see a bit more to say that for sure. Lower left-hand table, we'll just check range out of position blind on blind on the ace-king, or the king-king 5 two-tone board. Ace turn, we're going to go ahead, and I'm trying to think here. I think given that I've got a strong diamond draw, I just want to go ahead and I want to bet this large for an overbet, as I want some more money in that pot with the good diamond draws. Be doing that with my king X, my 5's full. Pretty much all my trip kings. I think I might even do it with aces, though. I'm actually trying to get value from an ace more than a king in that spot. I think he can have a lot of ace X in his range that calls pre-flop and then checks back the flop. I think his king X mostly doesn't trap, but a lot of ace X will be there. As such, I might actually be trapping on the turn with my aces full as well. Aces full and kings, or I could bet them small. I'm not sure I could go one way or the other. I don't think there's much merit in overbetting those hands, though. think I actually like overbetting with quad kings more so, as I think, you know, the ace-x hands might just get too sticky and let me win big pots. Upper right-hand table, we can fold king-jack from the small blind against the cutoff open. Lower left-hand table, king-jack is a standard cutoff open. Upper right-hand table, the rec limps in, and we just check in our big blind with jack-8. He checks behind us rather, on 6-8, 3-2 tone. We've got a flush closing turn. We've still got top pair. I think we need to deny equity, get some value from worse hands, stray diamonds. We go ahead and start betting out at that point. Lower left-hand table, 5-4 offsuit is not a standard open. The small blind is fishy, but he's been very loose. The big blind's also been on the loose side as well. I'm going to go ahead and fold this one. I'm going to check range on the ace-8 deuce two-tone board in the lower left-hand table after I raise first in pre-flop from the cutoff. Now I'm going to go ahead and start stabbing at this pot, as I like stabbing small better than check folding, check calling, or check raising. And I can probably even consider following through on the river, just because he probably doesn't. He probably calls with lots of draw type hands or some marginal pairs that may not be as inclined to call the second bet. I don't want to check down my king high. And he had a weak ace, which is a reasonable way to play that. But I just think it's okay to bluff my hand there, as those bluffs get through so often. Upper left-hand table, we'll open king-jack in the cutoff. Recreational player calls us in position again. Upper right-hand table, blind on blind, face a 3x first in. We're going to go ahead and either call or 3-bet with all of our offsuit aces. Mostly 3-betting ace-3, ace-deuce, and calling the rest of the small ones. But as long as you mix in a couple of them as the 3-bet, it probably doesn't matter too much which ones you pick. Lower right-hand table, we'll check range to the rec on ace-king-8 rainbow. And we're going to check back with our ace-4 on the upper right-hand table. Face a half pot from the rec. We're going to go ahead and call that with our second pair and check again on the 7 that completes the rainbow. And then we're going to check to this guy one more time and try to induce bluffs. I think there's much more value in inducing bluffs from a rec with a wide range than there is going to be in trying to value bet a worse hand there with my second pair when he can have so much ace-x in his range. Pretty sure I'm going to call this down. Yeah, I mean, that size tends to be a little bit bluff happy for fish. The bet check bet line is as well. Even with the ace high flop, I'm not that worried about it. I'm just going to go ahead and call this down, and he's got the ace, so be it. We'll raise blind on blind, upper right-hand table with king-queen offsuit. I don't mind how he played that hand over here, the rec. I think he played that hand pretty well. Not going to get 3 streets out of that with the weak ace, but getting 2 streets the way he did seemed to work out pretty nicely. Upper right-hand table, we're going to check range in the blind battle on jack-7 deuce two-tone. We can continue against a lot of sizes should he bet with our overcards and backdoor straight and flush draws. On the ace of clubs, we're going to go ahead and bet this small. We've got a decent club to hit the river as well as some straight draws. I don't want to check it. I don't want to check call it or check raise it. I like probing with it better. When we get raised, and we should probably be folding that, especially since that sizing does not induce raises as much as it should. I could have some 3-bet bluffs here. A lot of what he's doing that with is going to be some marginal ace-x hand that's trying to protect, against one club hands and get towards showdown to check back on the river, if he gets called. I'm not going to be able to flat call him to check raise the river with strong hands like flushes too often, so I think I would go ahead and 3-bet those. I'd probably just repot him at this point. Yeah, and set me up a nice slight overbet river jam. So I think that's what I would do if I had my flushes. I'd probably do it also with some naked king X, like king 10 or king queen with the king of clubs. With just the queen of clubs, I can go ahead and fold this. Lower right-hand table, we open the button with pocket threes, got called by the small blind and big blind on queen jack 4 monotone. We don't have any of the relevant suit. All pairs are better. I'm content to just go ahead and check that hand back. Yeah, and against the stab, I will just fold. I probably would have stabbed myself if it checked around twice, but against another player betting, even though he's a wreck, I think I'm just going to fold with the hand that's so weak. We'll open King 10 on that table as well from the cutoff. We get a 5x open blind on blind, the upper left-hand table. That's very funky. I'm not sure what to make of that. I think I can still call with ace-jack, but I'm obviously not calling nearly as widely for that size. Lower left-hand table, we're going to go ahead and play a 3-bet with our ace-queen. Having turned the open-ended straight draw, we also got a flush draw blocker. I'm going to go ahead and start betting with that King 10 hand in the lower right-hand table. I'll use the overbet size because I've got a good strong draw. And now this guy with the unusually large pre-flop sizing, he bets into me 2/3 on the flop. I've got overcards, ace-high backdoor flush draw, but given that large pre-flop sizing and larger flop sizing, I think I'm a lot less inclined to continue. I'm not even sure if the pre-flop call is correct. I'm going to go ahead and fold now at this point. If I was less suspicious about his range being too strong because he's been passive so far and now he's using a very large sizing, I think I would certainly float that hand, but I'm getting some inclination this guy is playing a much stronger range than I should have in that spot because of the pre-flop sizing and because of his otherwise passive tendencies. 58 over 12 hands, that's the first hand he's raised. Playing at 80 blinds, he's a recreational player. Their size-ups are usually very clearly strength. I think it's okay to be a bit snug there when I'm getting some of those warning signs that I may be against a range that's entirely much stronger than it really should be. Blind on blind, lower right-hand table, Queen 10 offsuit is a very standard hand to call. I think there's no merit in folding that, and there's really not much merit in 3-betting it either. I'm just going to go ahead and flat. I'd much rather have a heart in my hand, but I've got overcards. A 10 gives me an open-ended straight draw. I'm facing that small bet. I'm going to go ahead and float this in position. Upper right-hand table, we are in the small blind facing a button raise first in. You know, this is probably towards the bottom of our 3-bet range. However, I think I can still include it. It's pretty close. If you wanted to fold this, I don't hate it, but I'm going to go ahead and put it in there. Probably pretty close either way. The blind battle against the second barrel. We do have a gut shot now, but he's betting twice. I don't have any kind of heart draws or anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and fold this one to the second barrel. You know, if I had Jack 10, I would continue, of course, but against with just the gut shot, I think I'll get out of the way. We'll open Jack 8 suited from the cutoff and 8-7 suited from the cutoff on those two left tables, and we're going to fold to the 4-bet with Ace 9 suited on the upper right-hand table. Lower right-hand table, the recreational player limps under the gun. We're going to isolate from the small blind, once again with a pretty tight range, but it will include a hand like Ace-Queen offsuit. Shuffle out this upper right-hand table. But open 8-5 suited from the button, a bit wider than a standard open, but not too far, and I think it's very reasonable to expand our range given the pool's proclivities to not 3-bet quite enough. Lower left-hand table, King 9 suited is going to be an open from middle position. Lower right-hand table, multi-way with multiple players in position to me. I'm just going to go ahead and check my range, even though I have top pair, top kicker. And we're going to check range of the lower left-hand table on 9-9-6 with the in-position player calling me. Now that he flats me, we're just going to go ahead and start betting. I'm going to use like 2/3 size on this paired board. I'm going to continue checking now on the lower right-hand table as that King of Hearts peels off. It's not a great turn card for my particular hand. I no longer have top pair, straight Scott there. Still not necessarily worried that my hand is beat automatically, but I don't want to start betting now given that that card is not a great card for my particular hand. We're going to go ahead and call the recreational player's bet, half pot bet on the turn. We get raised in position. The only thing we're really worried about is a hand like 6s or 3s or I guess a better 9. But I'm just going to flat this and give him a chance to keep the bluffs in his range. Going to check to him again. Going to check the ace-queen. We got 2 callers. I would love to see this just check down at this point, especially with that 9 pairing the river as well. And a suspected wreck type player, he bets 2/3. He could have 7-8. He could have some other kind of better 9 like ace-9. He could have the sets, you know, that are full houses. I'm obviously not folding a hand this strong. I'm just trying to decide if there's any merit in really going ahead to raise this, which I don't think there's going to be. Let's take a look at how bluffy their check raise bet line is. Not that bluffy. We're just going to call this. And the other thing is, for me to raise, I've got to actually get called down by better or get called down by worse to make it worthwhile. Just the fact that he's got bluffs in his range, that means I don't fold, of course, but it doesn't automatically mean that I raise him back all in. Upper left-hand table, a recreational player opens 3x. We get called on the button and the small blind by two other suspected wrecks. This is, even though I get tighter with other players in the pot, a hand as good as 7-6 suited is a very fine hand to go ahead and call. So we're just going to call that and see if we can't hit something big and sneaky with a bunch of wrecks in a pot. I want to see what everybody had on that ace-queen hand. The big blind had ace-jack, so he called the turn with the gut shot, and the recreational player that was under the gun, he had 5-4 suited for a pair and a small flush draw. So his play, being in that pot, is pretty reasonable. The ace-jack player should probably have just folded out. Three-handed on this to the flop. It's a 6-10-10 rainbow. Checks around with the jack turn, completing the rainbow. I get bet into for about about a half pot bet. I'm going to go ahead and fold with all those players out there. I've got Jack X, 10X, various straight draws. I've got some sixes full. I've got plenty of much better hands. I don't need to call with all those players out there that also have some defense responsibility with just a marginal low pair. Lower right-hand table, blind on blind. We're going to go ahead and open with the ace-10. I had this guy tagged as a rec, but his stats don't seem very wrecky at this point, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold that. Lower left-hand table, we get a small open, 2.5x in this blind on blind spot. We can go ahead and start defending a lot wider than typical against that small open, including hands like king-5. Upper right-hand table is breaking, so we're just going to go ahead and find a new one. We're going to open king-10 on the lower right-hand table. We're going to open 4-5 offsuit heads up on the upper right-hand table, and we're going to stab for half pot in this blind battle with king-5 top pair on 5-4 deuce rainbow. Upper right-hand table will range bet king-5 deuce two-tone with our middle pair. Upper left-hand table, we open aces middle position, got called by a rec on the button. We're going to check range to him. We're going to now start betting. We're going to overbet, just thinking he can call us down with so many goofball one-pair hands. So I'm going to go ahead and put the overbet on the turn to try to get some more value. We get check called and face a donk bet on the turn. Donk bet for 2/3. It's a very weird line. I don't know that this guy is necessarily fishy. I'm going to go ahead and fold that out, thinking that line, as far as I know, he might be a reg, and that line tends to be a bit stronger from regs. The regs don't donk all that weak overall. Lower right left-hand table, we got check raise. We're going to go ahead and let our top pair go. He check raised us a pretty decent size. We don't have anything really going for this hand on most runouts other than just pure bluff catching. I don't know that the player is bluffy enough in that spot. I think it's fine to be a little on the tight side on these pools and fold to that flop check raise. I just don't know that that many players are check raising that aggressively in a blind on blind spot from the small blind. Lower right-hand table, we open queen jack from middle position for 2.5x. That's a standard open. Get called in position by a rec or a weak reg type player. We're going to check range to him on 10-4 deuce two-tone. Upper right-hand table, we're going to 3-bet the cutoff open from the button with a wide range, about 13%, including ace-queen. Let's see here. We can have ace-3, ace-5. We can have the sets to check raise. We can have some various flush draws. I think it's okay against that small stab to go ahead and continue this with overcards and kind of a weaker backdoor flush draw. Upper right-hand table, our 3-bet got called. We're going to go ahead and range bet on King 10-4 two-tone. Upper left-hand table, the flush card bangs off on the river. I'm going to go ahead and use that card as a bluffing card when I've got Queen High and a flush blocker. I'm going to use the overbet size with that flush completing me having the blocker in my hand. Upper right-hand table, we got check called on King 10-4. We've got the gut shot. I'm going to continue betting that. Let's see here. I think a size of about 20 is good. That sets me up for a river jam all in. I block any ace-king or king-queen he might have called with pre-flop to check call me down a couple of times. Lower left-hand table, blind on blind, 3x open. We can defend with king-8 offsuit. That's towards the bottom of our defense range, but a reasonable defense hand all the same. Get check called. We're going to go ahead and stab half pot with the top pair on the lower left-hand table in the blind battle. Upper right-hand table, we're just going to go ahead and barrel off with our good blockers, the top pair. We don't block the flush draw in any way. We've got Queen High, so we really can't show that down and expect it to be good. And the triple barrel line in the 3-bet pots when we're in position tends to get a decent number of folds there, so I'm not too worried about this bluff. Even though it's not going to get through all the time, I think it's still profitable. Lower right-hand table, we open 7-6 suited from the button. And we took it down. Get called by a recreational player in the big blind. We're going to go ahead and range bet small on the ace-king-9 two-tone board. Probably giving up anything except for, well, I guess we have a gut shot, so we could keep betting that to some extent. I think I'd rather be betting my high gut shots, though, against a fish. I'd rather be betting stuff that's got good removal to the flushes and to the top pair and second pair type hands. I'd rather be betting my Broadway draws here than my small gut shot. I'm actually going to check this small gut shot back and look to maybe bluff the river if he doesn't show any initiative for it. Upper left-hand table will open 10-8 suited in the blind on blind spot. It's a little outside of standard open, but not too far. On the river, I'm trying to think if there's any merit to overbetting. I think if I had better removal, like if I had a 10 in some way, I would overbet. Without good removal, I'm just going to go ahead and bet small. Lower left-hand table, we get check raise small. We're going to go ahead and call with our top pair. He really only check raised about a half-size bet on the pot, on half-size pot bet on the flop rather. So we're going to go ahead and call that with top pair. Face that second barrel. You know, I guess that card does coordinate with some possible flop check raise bluffs, like 5-7 is now the nut straight. You know, I can have lots of. I mean, I can have 5-7 myself. First of all, I can have lots of backdoor spade draws to continue with. I can have sets. I can have. I guess I still have hands like 4-6 to a little bit. I don't really have too much two-pair on this board, but do have the sets. I do got some overpairs. I'm going to go ahead and make a snug fold with top pair just without much reason to know that this guy is particularly bluffy in these check raise lines. It is pretty close. I'm probably supposed to call that hand, at least at equilibrium. But when I've got these hands that are, you know, already somewhat marginal in lines where the players I don't think are necessarily that bluffy, and there's not really many, if any, cards that improve my hand to being all that strong, I tend to fold the street too early as opposed to street too late. Blind on blind, we face a limp. We'll just check back with our Queen 5 offsuit and go to the flop. Lower right-hand table, we face a limp from a recreational player than an isolation. If I'm going to have a re-raise size there, it's going to be on the larger size. It's going to be about 18 blinds over his roughly 4x isolation size. I don't want to use King 10 in that sizing right there, and I don't really want to have flats with two players acting after me and a player that can still squeeze me pre-flop with the limp re-raise. So I'm mostly just going to play a 3-bet or fold spot there, and King 9's a bit too weak to use in that 3-bet range, so it ends up being folded. Lower left-hand table, we'll open King, Queen offsuit from middle position. Lower right-hand table, under the gun opens to 3x. We can fold 3s from middle position. I'm going to be playing 3-bet or fold in that spot. And pocket 3s is just far too weak. Probably want a hand like pocket 9s or better. Ace-queen, ace-king. Suited versions of ace-10, king-10 or better, queen-jack, and a couple of suited wheel aces like ace-5, ace-4, something like that. That rec limps in. We check the big blind with 8-3 suited. Check range on 9-5-4 rainbow. We face a half pot bet. Got a little bit in the way of some backdoor straight and flush draws, but nothing too great. I'm just going to go ahead and fold to him. Upper left-hand table, we're going to open pocket 8s on the button. Get called by a rec and a queen 5 deuce two-tone flop. He checks to us, so we'll go ahead and range bet small. He instantly calls and then checks to us again. It's a jack turn, putting a double flush draw out there. I'd be using overbet size on this texture for sure, with me having all these combos of queens, jacks, 5s, deuces, all combos suited and offsuit of queen, jack. I've got the queen 5 suited, and I've jack 5 suited. I might even have some queen deuce suited. Plus I've got the overpairs, ace queen, king queen. and all kinds of good draws. So I'm definitely overbetting, but pocket eights is a fine hand to check back. Look toward getting that hand more towards showdown or to catch some bluffs against whiff draws. And he bets a little under half pot. I'm pretty sure I'm just going to go ahead and call this, but I'm going to think about it for a minute. Yeah, I mean, that check call, check bet line is pretty bluffy, and that half pot size is extremely bluffy. We're going to go ahead and call this down, even though sometimes it's a queen. Yep. And this recreational player, on his second hand, he 3-bets us. We're sitting on ace-queen. It's the only decision. If I'm trying to decide what I want to do here against a guy. A guy playing 30 blinds deep is probably not 3-betting all that spazzily to call off. But I also don't know that. He's only been at the table for 2 hands. It is only 30 blinds. I'm not stung that badly when I run into better hands, and I pick up 12 pre-flop if I ever catch him folding. We're going to ship him in. And got him in with ace-jack. So yeah, if I'm occasionally getting them in to call me down, call off with worse hands there that I dominate, that becomes a very clear shove right there. Upper left-hand table, we'll open ace-queen suited from middle position. Upper right-hand table, we face a 2.5x open from the button. While we're on the big blind, we can defend that with a hand like jack-6 suited for sure. Check range in that spot to the button player who raised. We have a flush draw on the ace-7-7 two-tone board. He checks back. I'm really only going to be value betting here my hands like my 7s and 5s full. So I'm going to go ahead and overbet those hands as well as some of my flush draws and straight draws. Upper right-hand table, we get called by 2 players in position, at least one of whom is erect. The other one is potentially as well. We get an ace-jack-jack two-tone board, so we're just going to go ahead and check range with the multiple players in position to us. Nothing to do but go ahead and check call with ace-queen against that recreational player's half-pot flop stab. Upper right-hand table will open blind on blind with the pocket 5s. Lower right-hand table will open the cutoff 2.5x with king-10 offsuit. Both players call the upper left-hand table, so we're just going to go ahead and keep checking with our ace-queen. It checks around to the river. With it all checking around, I think I actually want to try to get value from some kind of raggy or ace-x as opposed to trying to induce a bluff. So I'm going to go ahead and bet this out 2/3. Ace-10 is probably a little bit too loose to continue with against the 3-bet. I probably use ace-jack offsuit as my 4-bet bluff in that formation. If I thought the pool was sufficiently aggressive the way a solver would be, I think I might put ace-10 in my 4-bet bluffing range. Given that I don't have any reason to think this guy is as aggressive as a solver is, because the pool as a whole is not, I'm going to be slightly tighter than a GTO type opponent would be. And I'm just going to go ahead and fold that. And I did value bet myself into trip jacks, but I think that's okay. I think I like the idea of trying to get an ace-x hand, of which there's going to be a lot, at least in this player's range, to go ahead and call that river bet, thinking he's got some kind of chop. I'm not that worried about a jack-x, a way that check through, and I think the whiffed heart draws, for the most part, give up multi-way. So I'm okay trying to get some value there, even though I value cut myself, because we're supposed to value cut ourselves some of the times, or we're not value betting thinly enough. So I'm okay with the way that hand played, even though we lost. Lower right-hand table, we'll open queen 5 suited from the button. Upper right-hand table, blind on blind, we will open 5-4 suited. We can get 3-bet all in the lower right-hand table by a 27 blind, big blind, nothing to do but just fold Queen 5 suited. That's probably that same guy that I just stacked a few minutes ago with the Ace Queen versus Ace Jack pre-flop for 30 blinds. We'll raise the cutoff first in with our pocket sixes. And then he goes and re-raises the small blind. I think sixes are slightly too loose to jam back at this guy. I think I would definitely not be super cautious, given I'm pretty sure it's that ace-jack guy all over again, and he just did that again earlier, that last hand. I think sixes is probably still a bit too loose. I think I'd jam back on him with something like ace-jack offsuit plus, eights plus, maybe ace-10 suited, something kind of like that. I think that's a pretty decent range to play back at that 30-blind stack. I'm just pulling that out of thin air right now as a guess, but I think that seems pretty reasonable. I know he's 3-betting lighter than typical. I don't know if he's 3-bet folding very much yet, though, and that's something that would mean a lot to me for if I start adding some of those middle pairs and ace-x suited type hands into my range to go after him. Blind on blind, upper right-hand table, we can defend a 3x raise first in with the 7-6 offsuit. He checks to me on king 9-9 two-tone. I'm going to check back without a whole lot of any equity really in this hand. A couple of weak backdoor gut shot or straight draw type hands is about it. On the turn, when he checks again and I've got this pair, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to stab for about 2/3 pot. Mostly just looking to check back the river. I want to fold out overcards like ace-jack or get value from a hand like ace-jack that thinks its ace-high is good. I don't want to let those random overcards get a chance to peel on me for free. Upper left-hand table will open king 9 offsuit in the blind on blind situation. Get instantly 3-bet, we instantly fold. We're happy to check back our 7 over here. We were against a weak king, which is not an unreasonable way for him to play it, but I think we played it okay too. We're going to give up 1 bet on that hand at some point anyway, having made the pair, so I think, denying some equity from stuff that he doesn't want to really, check call with, we can just fold out for free and send the equity to 0 on the turn. I think that's reasonable. Lower left-hand table, 8-7 suited's an open. Upper right-hand table, blind on blind, jack-3 is suited's an open. Lower right-hand table facing a 2.5x open from the button. We will also defend with jack-10. Even though this guy's been on the tight side, we can still defend with a hand like jack-10. Upper right-hand table, we're going to check range in the blind battle on ace-king 8 two-tone. He checks back. Ace on the turn, we're going to start overbetting, our ace-x, our kings and eights full, and a lot of our flush draws. Lower right-hand table, we face that small button continuation bet. We're going to go ahead and check raise that with the open-ended straight draw. Upper right-hand table, we river the 9 to make the flush. We've got about a pot and a half size bet left behind. We're just going to go ahead and put this guy all in. Try to, get called out by any ace that he's got for sure. He snap calls, we are good. The turn after we check raise the straight draw, we turn to jacks. We actually have some showdown value. I'm just going to go ahead and check that as opposed to keep betting. Lower left-hand table, our button raise first in faces a small 3-bet to about a 3x size from the small blind. We can call a lot of hands, especially suited connected hands like 8-7 suited versus that. So that's what we do. Over here on the turn, we face, a 2/3 type bet, 3/4 type bet from the player who flatted the check raise. It's okay to fold against a player this time. We have so much equity, it's not okay to fold. I take that back. Any 7, any queen, any jack, we really like our hand. Upper right-hand table, we faced a raise first in from under the gun. We went ahead and 3-bet from the button. We're going to go ahead and continuation bet our range small on jack-10 two-tone. Lower left-hand table, we check back on the flop with no real equity. On the turn, we face a small bet, and we can just fold out our 8 high. We get check called. Turn is interesting now on this upper right-hand table in that we have king, queen, we have tens, we have aces full, we have ace, jack, and we've also got this king, jack type hand. This is actually our weakest trips type hand. I think I might want to have a few trips that check back, because I'm going to go ahead and actually under-rep this one and check this hand back. I'm fine calling off on kings. I'm fine calling off or raising on queens. Not worried about getting blown off the hand here by worse hands if I check back on pretty much any river run out. I guess the diamonds aren't great for me. But it's okay to have some of those strong jacks check back. Or some jacks check back because they're strong. But I'd like to keep betting with my tens full for sure, and my probably ace jack. Keep betting my straights. I think I would trap my quad jacks, trap my aces full. Now I'm facing that second check on the river. I'm just going to go ahead and try to get some value in the bet check bet line with my trip jacks. Can call by a lot of ace X type hands that floated the flop. Lower right-hand table will open king 10 offsuit from middle position. I want to see what that rec called me with in the... Oh, and I actually overflushed that guy. It was 10-5 of clubs versus Jack-3 of clubs, so he got flush over flush. That's kind of a cold deck for him. Not kind of, it is a cold deck for him. Lower left-hand table, we're going to go ahead and 3-bet the cutoff open from our big blind with roughly a 10% range of which ace-queen offsuit's in there. Probably only really 3-betting ace-queen, ace-king offsuit as my offsuit hands. The other ones that I want to continue with can just continue for a flat. Now against the 4-bet, I can just go ahead and fold ace-queen offsuit out of position. No reason to get involved any further there. Lower right-hand table, we just range bet on the ace-queen-queen two-tone. Upper right-hand table, we've got a 7-5-4 two-tone board. We open from the cutoff. We're just going to go ahead and bet that small with our king-9, 2 overcards, backdoor flush draw holding. Upper left-hand table, the recreational player limps again. Actually, no, that's a different rec, but he limps. He hasn't limped that much, but he's limped before, but he limps under the gun. We're going to isolate with, a typical isolation range from the blinds, about 12%, of which ace is, of course, a part of that. So we isolate him up there. Lower left-hand table, a small short stack type player opens middle position for 2.5x. Against a full stack, I'm going to 3-bet this. I don't want to 3-bet and call off against this guy. I don't want to 3-bet fold either, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold it right now. Upper left-hand table, we get limp called by the rec. We go ahead and range bet on the 10-6-4 two-tone flop. Lower right-hand table, we have who I now suspect is a recreational player as he open limps the button. We're going to go ahead and isolate up from the blinds with a decently tight range of hands, but still including a hand like pocket nines. Probably pocket eights are better or fine for raising up there, or you could even go a bit wider than that. But that's about how wide I would recommend going. He calls. We get ace 9-8 two-tone flop. We're going to go ahead and range bet that small. Quickly calls. We get an offsuit 3. We have 8s, 9s, aces, and ace-9 suited. He should not have nearly as many combos of those. Plus we have, Jack-10, Jack-Queen, and King. I'm sorry. We have Queen-Jack, Queen-10, and Jack-10 type hands, often with flush draws as well. So we've got big hands and big draws. I want to go ahead and overbet here, I think. Actually, maybe I can use more like a pot size bet. 20, 40, 58. We'll go like 22. Sets us up for a small river overbet all in. He instantly folds to the turn overbet. upper right-hand table, we open from middle position. We face a big blind 3-bet from 3 to 8. I want to go all in or full, and I don't want to go all in quite as weak as ace-9, so I'm going to go ahead and muck this. Lower right-hand table, get a 2x RFI from under the gun. I mostly play 3-bet or fold, and pocket 8s are just outside that 3-bet range. I don't really have flats on the button, even for 2.5x. Just because the rake in these games is so bad. I'm going to go ahead and fold that. If you want to have flats on the button, pocket 8s is the exact kind of hand that should be in the flattening range. I don't mind if you throw that hand in your flattening range there as well. I just tend to play 3-bet or fold almost exclusively from non-big blind positions, including the button, so that's what I did there. And this short stack type player with 20 blinds opens the button for min raise. I'm actually going to 3-bet him and just try to get this in with ace-jack, given that he's so short and he seems like he's reasonably active. Probably min raising a wide range on the button, looking for a cheap steal. He instantly folded. Short stack raises first in, cut off 3-bets, some nothing to do but get out of the way with pocket 5s. Lower right-hand table, we'll open queens from under the gun, part of a standard 17-ish% raise first in range in that formation. Get quickly called by a middle position player who's, perhaps somewhat recreational and fishy as he's calling in that position, but he's probably not too bad as he's playing 22-15, decently reg type stats. More cold calls pre-flop than I would care to see, but nothing I'm too shocked about. We get min raised by a player who's only played 1 orbit so far, hasn't raised yet, but he's been limpy, fishy. I think it's okay to 4-bet and isolate with this guy here with queens plus ace-king. I'd often call pre-flop against a small 3-bet in position with the queens, especially in an earlier formation. With another player behind that I want to squeeze out, though, I'm just going to go ahead and 4-bet. Now he goes and jams all in over the top of me quickly. This actually might be a little bit marginal to call off with here. I was not expecting him to just jam and jam so fast in this formation. I actually think it's okay to fold, especially with such a relatively small amount of money in pre-flop for the 4-bet. Perhaps that means I should have actually just flatted pre-flop instead. I'm not completely sure, but I think it's actually okay to go ahead and fold this against a player who is probably not particularly loose or aggressive. And you won't catch me folding queens preflop very often or 4-bet folding queens preflop very often. I just think it kind of makes sense in that particular formation. From what I've seen when these wrecks, they min 3-bet you but don't go away, that's usually a very strong hand. The min 3-bet, not necessarily, but then to just instantly jam over the top of the 4-bet, I feel like that is probably pretty strong. Upper left-hand table, we've got a cutoff open. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet a fairly standard button versus cutoff 3-bet range, about 13%. It's going to include suited 9s like 10-9 suited. Towards the bottom of the range, but still a fine hand to include for that. We get cold called by the rec in the big blind. Lower left-hand table, 8-10, or lower right-hand table rather, 8-10 offsuit's a bit outside of a standard open, but these blinds have not been particularly aggressive. It's not too far outside of a standard open. I think it's fine to expand our range a bit here and try to get in some extra pots. Against the 3-bet, though, we will, of course, quickly fold. Upper left-hand table, the recreational player cold called that 3-bet of his big blind, and then the raise first in player from the cutoff came along as well. We flop 5-4-4 two-tone. We've got that heart draw. And now the rec leads out for 3/4 of pot. Lower right-hand table, we're just going to go ahead and raise ace-10 offsuit in the cutoff, raise that hand first in. With our flush draw, there's no reason to do anything but just go ahead and continue for a call. I don't think I fold him off too much, especially in the way of any kind of pocket pair that trapped. I want to peel that third heart on the turn, which just came in. He instantly jams, which does not scare me at all. I instantly call with my queen-10. He made the straight, actually. Oh, and then he banged off a straight flush with the ace of hearts there to go with his 2 of hearts. So that was pretty wacky, spazzy play by him. But it worked out. He rivered me. He rivered the only card in the deck that was going to beat me. Well, I guess the 6 of hearts would have done it too. There were 2 cards in the deck that would have beat me, the 6 or the deuce of hearts. So he got there, and he was jamming his straight on the turn. His pre-flop play is kind of funky. His flop play is kind of funky. His turn play, I guess I don't mind. And I'm, of course, happy to get it in there with a flush against a fish in a 3-bet pot. But, you know, you're occasionally outdrawn. Nothing you can do about that. And if anyone's going to put a nice greasy beat on me like that, I want it to be the recreational player because I want him to have more chips to dump around the table, hopefully back into my lap in the next orbit or two. So the silver lining is if I have to take a nice greasy beat, I want it to be that guy and not against a reg that's going to cash the money out. Upper right-hand table, blind down blind, face a 3x open. We just go ahead and defend with ace-8 offsuit. Get a large flop continuation bet on ace, king, queen, two-tone. We do have to call that at least once, but I won't be surprised if he finds a way to blow me off this hand, just given that he's showing strength with that large flop sizing. When he checks the turn, I'm going to go ahead and check my marginal ace back. Now I've got aces and threes with the kicker on the board. Against the 2 checks now, against the bet check line, I think I can try to get value. I'm really not even worried about him having a hand. Yeah, given that I don't think he really plays, any of the full houses or any of Jack 10 straight this way with a double check. So any ace X hands I chop with, I can maybe get called by some king X or queen X type hands that don't believe me. I think it's okay to try to get value there. I would have to bluff with my whiffed diamond draws that took that particular line, or some whiffed gut shots to Broadway. So I want to have some value hands in there as well too. Oh, and the rec left. My whole plan of letting the recreational players stack me so there's some to outdraw me to have some money to throw around the table apparently has backfired. But if he's leaving, there's no point in me being there. I'll leave too, and we'll find another table. Blind down blind, facing a 3x open. We will call with King 8 suited. Probably not good enough to 3-bet with, and certainly too strong to fold. So I think that's just a very clear call. Face a Jack, Queen 9 rainbow board. This is a good hand to start barreling with, as we've got, that gut shot straight on the 10, but we also have great removal to the nuts in that we block King 10 and 10-8. So this is a hand I'm probably going to be putting a lot of money in with on various streets, depending on exactly what runs out, but on most runouts. But we'll start with that half pot flop stab when he checks to me. And I'm not going to be stabbing range blind on blind, but hands that have some equity, backdoor equity, or at least good removal, those are good candidates for putting in the flop stab range. Blind on blind in that table, upper right-hand corner, 7-5 offsuit would not be a standard raise first in, and this player has been on the loose side, and he's also got some 3-bets in so far, so I'm not going to expand my range and open light in that spot. Even though the pool as a whole is probably fine to open that against. But against a player who's found himself to be loose and aggressive, or at least I think that so far based on the first couple of orbits, I'll just go ahead and fold. Lower right-hand table, blind down blind. The player in the big blind hasn't played anything in the first orbit. He's been on the tighter side from what we've seen, so I'll just try to rob him with Queen 5. And facing the middle position, raise first in, and we're just going to play 3-bet or fold on the button and not include hands as weak as 9-8 suited in our 3-bet range. Probably have something like a 10% 3-bet range, but I won't include a hand as weak as 9-8 suited. Probably 9s plus suited broadways, a couple of suited wheel aces, and then ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack, king, queen. Something like that will get you there. I don't need to start putting middle to low suited connectors in that 3-bet range. Otherwise, I'm going to have too wide of a frequency, get myself too prone to being 4-bet, or players just calling me and coming along because my range isn't quite as strong as it should be. Lower right-hand table, we got a 2.5x open. This player is only just been at the table for a couple of hands, so we're just going to treat him like a standard reg if we don't know anything to the contrary about him right now. 10-9 suited is a standard defense against a standard regs button open, so we'll go ahead and put that in the range. This board is interesting in that I don't really have aces, kings, or queens, or any ace-king or ace-queen, or really even any king-queen. I will, however, have a bunch of combos of Jack-10, which means I think it's okay to have some 10x type hands in my range, some 10x or Jack-X hands in my range as check raise bluff, because I would also want to check raise my Broadway straight, my Jack-10 offsuit here. So I think it's okay to throw in a check raise here, even though I don't really have the other strong hands on that board. I do have plenty of combos of the nuts. And the combos with the heart are, of course, that much stronger, and that I pick up, I have some runner flush equity, and perhaps more importantly, I block his flush draws that could float along, especially as combo draws that include a 10 or Jack X of hearts. Upper right-hand table, he checked back the flop. We're just going to go ahead and probe at this now on the Jack 8-10 deuce two-tone board. Well, two-tone flop with a rainbow turn. And we're doing that so we can go ahead and just try to bluff the river. Given I don't think he really plays flush draws in that way very often, and the King X should scare all of his hands except for a hand like King Queen that checked back the flop. I'm going to go ahead and use the overbet bluff size here. Upper right-hand table, small blind facing a button, raise first in for 3x. We'll go ahead and 3-bet with our King-Queen offsuit. We check range the lower right-hand table on the Queen 5-3 monotone. We'll start jabbing at it now just to see if he has anything that wants to come along. We'll raise Queen 9 opposite in the button, the upper right-hand table. Upper left-hand table, we have a button limp, so we limp in the small blind with pocket sixes. We'll fold Queen 9 against that small blind 3-bet. And then we get called by the player on Queen 5-3-3. We're going to go ahead and bluff once more with Jack 9. I don't have good removal to the hearts or the straights, so I'm not going to use a smaller size, not get myself in trouble. The 6-8-5 board, I'm just going to go ahead and check raise against that that 2/3 bet than the recreational player's button call. We've got a strong hand with the set here and a limp pot. We want to start getting some money in. Turn is a 10, which doesn't really do too much to hurt us. Trying to think if it really does anything to hurt us. No, I mean 7-9 was already beating us. So we're going to go ahead and continue betting, use a standard 2/3 size after we check raise the flop for our turn barreling size. Lower right-hand table, the small blind has been passive and tight. Big blind has been about average. We can go ahead and expand our range and open a hand like 10-7 offsuit, given at least one of the blinds has been tight. The big blind player also might be on the fishy side, given that he's playing 70-ish blinds deep. We'll fold it to the 3-bet. However, upper right-hand table, Queen 5 suited is a fine hand to open blind on blind. Not even close to considering folding a hand like that. And I would have to have some pretty convoluted scenarios under which that I would in fact fold a hand like that against a player playing 100 or more blinds deep in the blinds. Okay, upper right-hand table, we're on the button. We're facing middle position, raise first in. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet our button with about a 10% range, including a couple of suited wheel aces like ace-5. Upper right-hand table, we've got a recreational player opens under the gun for 3x. We're going to go ahead and 3-bet him, pretty tightly, about 8% range, but King 10 suited can be a part of that. Probably one of the worst hands. We're not even going to do it with all of our suited Broadways. We probably won't even do it with Jack 10, Queen 10, but we're going to do it with most. We got the fold. Upper right-hand table, we face that 4-bet in position, or 4-bet out of position. We're in position, middle position versus button. Against a solver that 4-bets completely aggressively, we actually probably go ahead and float with this particular hand. Against the player pool that just does not find enough 4-bet bluffs, especially in a tighter formation, I can go ahead and comfortably throw this into the muck and not feel too bad about it. Against that 3x open, or the 4x open rather, in the lower right-hand table, I'm going to be pretty tight with my cold calls. I'm not going to call a lot of my middling and weak suited kings, so King 5 suited can just be a fold against that size. If he opened 2.5x or something like that, I could come along for it. But for the price he's laying me there with the 4x raise first in, it just doesn't justify a call with a hand like that. Got a 3x open from middle position. A recreational player calls in the small blind. Against a 3x open from middle position, even ignoring the small blind caller, 5 suited is a bit too weak to come along with. And even though this guy's fishy, I would be expanding my range with any kind of suited aces or kings that I don't come along with because this guy is fishy. I don't want to play with a hand that makes a middling flush. I want to get in there deep with him with a hand that can make nut-type hands. Jack 8 suited is just outside my standard open, the upper right-hand table, so I'm going to go ahead and fold that, but it's pretty close. can't isolate the limper with 6-5 offsuit. It's just too weak even on the button, but we can go ahead and tag him as a recreational player for playing 75 blinds deep and limping under the gun. We'll tag this guy as a rec as well for limping under the gun. And he's also playing 56, 57 blinds deep, which is another giveaway. This player playing less than 100 blinds deep also has had some limps. We'll tag him. We're going to isolate that limper from the cutoff using something like a middle position raise first in range. You know, a low 20s, 22-ish% raise first in range. All the suited aces are fine to raise this guy with, though. Upper left-hand table, these guys haven't shown themselves to be particularly loose or aggressive, particularly the big blind that's only 3-bet 3% of hands over 35 opportunities. 5-3 suited may not be a standard button raise first in, but given that the blinds have not been particularly aggressive, I will expand my range to include that hand. We get a Jack 6-4 two-tone board. We're going to go ahead and range bet small. And we have the open at a straight draw, so we may be putting a lot of money into this pot on later streets depending on the exact cards that peel off. Uh, 2.5x open from the button. 7 deuce suited is just too weak to defend, even for, you know, a standard or smallerish type size. Blind on blind, the upper left-hand table. 8-6 offsuit's not a standard open, but we don't know anything about this player yet, and the pool tends to be too passive in the blind on blind spot, so I'm going to expand my range and go ahead and seal with the particular combo. I will check range on the Queen Jack 4 two-tone. Upper right-hand table, 9-7 suited is a standard blind on blind open. I will check fold with 8 high, and only the weakest of backdoor draws on the upper left-hand table. I'm okay with doing that, though, even though all I did was check fold the flop, just because I'm going to make my money pre-flop with getting too many folds, and also by getting to the flop and realizing more equity by getting to the flop more often than I should, because I'm not being 3-bet. For the same reasons that I talked about in the blind-on-blind battle, I'll also expand my range to open 7-4 suited, this time on the button. On a 5-5-4 two-tone board, I will range bet small. Upper right-hand table, 9-8 suited is on the cusp of my standard opens, probably one of the weakest hands I would open in general on the button. We get check called over there on the 5-5-4 two-tone with an offsuit 10 peeling off. I'm now going to check back my middling pairs like 7-4, look to get to the river, and ideally check down or perhaps bluff catch. This guy, he bets 2/3 into me. I'm not really sure if he's a reg or a fish. This is already going to make the analysis a bit tricky. But let's see. If it's a reg, that sizing tends to be a bit overbluffed. Want to see what a Broadway river overcard tends to be a bit overbluffed, but a flush closing river offsets that. And the paired flop also tends to be slightly more bluffy. I'm going to go ahead and call this down. Probably somewhat close, but I'm going to call it down. Upper right-hand table, King 10 offsuit is a fine hand to open from the middle position, so that's what we'll do. That call down with 7-4 on the river is probably okay to do, but fairly close against a reg. Without knowing too much about this guy, he's only been at the table for 2 orbits, but he has played particularly loose. No limps, but 55-36 over 11 hands. It's possible he's a fish. Now, against a fish using that size in that line, that's going to be even more bluffy than the regs tend to be. And the flush closing river, offsets it somewhat, but the Broadway River also goes and trends more bluffy. The paired flops tend to be a bit more bluffy. So against the fish, it's even more of a hand that should be called. Against the reg, it's pretty close. If he actually is a fish, and I don't know if he's a fish or a reg, against a fish, it's a clear call. But so given that I'm not entirely sure if I'm against a reg or a fish, there's some chance it's both. That makes me even more inclined to call, just because there's some chance I'm snapping off a fish with all kinds of air in his range in that spot. Probably not huge decisions for your EV one way or another, but that's the thought process I'm going through, and I'm deciding how I want to play that hand. Let's see here. Upper right-hand table, we open 8s under the gun for 2.5x. We get jammed all in by a button playing 18 blinds deep. We're getting about 3-2 on our call. We only need about 40% equity with pocket 8s. I think given the price that we're getting, I'm supposed to call this down. And I ran into pocket 3s, so I've actually got him dominated, so I think that call is very good now that I see he can have a hand like pocket 3s there as well. I'd like his play better if he's going to be doing some light jams there with ace-x type hands, or even hands like king-queen, hands that are going to be pretty live against my calling range. Pocket 3s will be the heavy side of a flip if I call him down with a hand like ace-10. But if I call him down with the middle pair like I did, he's going to be way behind. So I think I would like his jams better with ace-x, king-queen type hands than with the real small pairs. Button raise first in, we'll 3-bet or fold from the small blind pretty aggressively, probably something like a 15% range, but not hands as weak as king-5 suited. Probably king-9 suited or better, so king-5 really not even all that close. small blind facing a cutoff raise first in the lower right-hand table. Ace-6 suited is probably a bit too weak. That's really my worst suited ace. So I'm not going to 3-bet all my suited aces in that formation. Probably more like a 10 or 11% 3-bet range. And I'll fold a few of the suited aces with Ace-6 suited being the first one I fold if I have any suited ace folds at all. Upper right-hand table will raise first in with the 10s and the cutoff. Upper left-hand table get a 3x open from a player who's been loose and aggressive so far in middle position. We're going to defend the 3x open with a call with the Ace-6 suited in our big blind. And against that half pot bet, we'll just go ahead and fold. I would continue with anything that paired up with the board, any kind of straight draw. You know, some backdoor draws as well. I don't think for the half pot bet I need to continue with Ace-6 suited. It's probably closer than I'm giving it credit for. I'm just going to go ahead and fold it. I'm also going to go ahead and shut down this session after these orbits end and take a break for a little while. Upper left-hand table, blind on blind. The player's been reasonably tight, but very, very passive. So we're going to just go ahead and try to rob him blind on blind with 6-4 off. This would not be a standard open, but when the player's been so passive, even though he goes and 3-bets me as soon as I say that, even though he's been so passive, you can go ahead and raise a lot more hands in the blinds just because you'll either, if not take them down pre-flop, you'll get to the flop way more than you should. Upper left-hand table, Ace-4 offsuit is standard open. Get called by that looser, aggressive player in the big blind. We have a 10-6-6 rainbow board, so we'll go ahead and range bet that small. We get quickly called. There's a 3. I'd want to keep betting with straight draws over a hand like Ace-4 offsuit with no real draws. You know, I've got 4-5, 5-7, 7-8, 8-9, 7-9. Those are all going to be much better bluffs. If I'm going to start bluffing overcards, I'm going to want to have stuff that coordinates more closely with the 10 and also has less showdown value, hands like Queen-Jack, King-Jack, King-Queen over the Ace-X type hand. So I'm just going to go back and check back this Ace-4. And against the bet on the river, I'm just going to go ahead and fold this particular time. You know, I can have a lot of 10x type hands that check back. You know, 7's full got there. Obviously, it's not a huge part of my range, but I have that. But I think my bluff catchers on this are going to be lots of 10x hands that check back. Some 3x hands can consider bluff catching as well in my pocket pairs like 8s and 9s. I think I probably have to be bluff catching with random 7x that hit that card that that weren't involved in turn bets, and even a lot of 3x just because otherwise I'm folding way too much. I think Ace-4 is fine to fold. In fact, it's possible he's even bluffing with a hand like Ace-Jack, which I don't even beat, so I definitely don't want to put that into a calling range. Queen-10 offsuit, we will open from the cutoff. That's a standard open, part of a 28-ish% raise first in range from the cutoff. And against the under the gun raise first in, we'll play 3-bet or fold from middle positions, and we will not be 3-betting our pocket 3s. 9-4 is a fold under the gun, and Jack-9 is also a fold under the gun, so that's the end of our tables for this session. Hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. This is Charlie Murphy signing off. Thank you for watching.